So we have the last panel. So between us and the awards is just our conversation. But since we're talking of medicine, drugs, so I think that's fine. Uh, the reason we wanted to have this conversation is that pharma plays a very, very important role when it comes to healthcare delivery. At the center of the healthcare delivery is the patient, and the pharma becomes a part of every part of the healthcare delivery systems, and sometimes also gets the blame for increasing cost, shortage of medicines. So इस सब को solve करने के लिए, we thought that we should have a conversation to understand that, when we are manufacturing drugs, is there beyond that's something that we are doing? I believe there is a lot that we are doing, but it does not come to the light of the audience. So Meenakshi, I'm going to start with you. What do you think is the role of pharma companies beyond just manufacturing medicines? And what is it that you have demonstrated globally, and what is it that you're doing in India to showcase that you care for the society beyond just selling medicines?
Thank you, Harbinder. So firstly, hello everybody. When you started the question itself, I wanted to, kind of phrase it almost differently to say that the manufacturing part of what we do, the manufacturing of medicines is really, one step in a very long process, right? And the first starting point is really the entire research and development that goes into, defining the drugs. And I'm sure many of you know what it takes, but I think the research phase and the development phase are probably the most critical phases for most of our pharma companies because the energy, the investment, the failure rate is extremely high. Just to give you an example, for a simple drug development, the costs could be anything between $250 to $300 million. So it takes a lot to actually get a drug to a stage where we can manufacture. So sometimes that gets forgotten, but I think it's our responsibility to remind. Of course, the manufacturing is important, but there again, it's not just the manufacturing, it's the entire quality control, quality release process that we invest a lot of energy in. Then we come to the entire supply chain and logistics, which is also, I think, COVID brought it to life. But just to give you an example, people are surprised when we remind them that the average run on chemists is at least 3 times a day that they're getting their supply. So the supply chain is very, very just in time, and that's what we have to manage. And then, of course, is when particularly we are bringing new drugs to market, new innovations, new chemical entities, the entire education, the entire medical education, the entire experience, the entire data sharing, the scientific, selling, that is all extremely important because in most cases we are bringing, just to give you an example, we are just going to launch a drug in medical dermatology and there's been no drug for the treatment of atopic dermatitis for the last 30 years. Now it sounds like a fantastic opportunity, but on the other hand, every single doctor is very used to writing certain medicines. For them to change and prescribe something else, it will take a lot of scientific conviction, a lot of scientific selling, a lot of scientific knowledge sharing. So that is really the whole spectrum that we are in. And it's just a good reminder that the manufacturing piece is just one very, very narrow sliver of the whole thing. I think the second question to Harbinder's question was, what else are we doing beyond just selling medication? The answer to that is again very long, so I won't get into it because I'm sure my colleagues will add a lot to that as well. But I think there's a lot. I mean, we don't see our responsibility as manufacturing and selling drugs. That's not what gets us up every morning. That's not what motivates our people. It's a lot to really make sure that we're doing everything we can to get the right product to the right patient at the right time. Now, what does that actually mean in terms of access, in terms of distribution, in terms of, making sure we have the right price for countries like ours, driving screening programs, particularly when it comes to oncology. And I hope we get a chance to talk about that as well. But there's a lot that goes into it. So our job, the way we define it, is not about manufacturing and selling medication as much as possible. It is really about, the purpose is breakthroughs that change patients' lives. And the idea is to actually make a difference to as many patients as possible. So I think it's a long answer to a long question, but I'll hand over to my colleagues to maybe add to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meenakshi. Sanjeev, let me come to you. You know, AstraZeneca, when we look at this company, it is always known for its commitment towards patient-centric innovation. You know, what is it that the company does to engage in support patient empowerment, education, engaging into initiatives that enhance the health outcomes?
Thank you very much once again for the great panel. So at AstraZeneca, we, and like every other company, would start with the purpose of our company. And our purpose of our company is to keep pushing the boundaries of science. And if one word which defines us, one is science, how we bring that science to patients, because it's a huge, long process. At the same time, our own values to bring those science to patients. And let me give you some examples here. So one is, we are looking at patients as people first, as part of our purpose itself, and not patient as patient. So if you look at patient as patient only, then you're just talking about just medicine manufactured and giving it to them. And even in our narrative, what we are trying to say is we want to really unlock the power of science for healthy people, healthy society, and planet. So what we are bringing, and you were asking the question about how do we look beyond manufacturing, we are looking at people, society, and planet as a pharmaceutical company to make a difference. Now, when we talk about people, and I want to give this example of our vaccine, we are not a vaccine manufacturing company. And when COVID came, the collaboration which we did with Oxford and with the government, and how we technology transferred the whole COVID vaccine to India, to SII, this is really helping the patient outcome. And that is not a medicine, actually. That is more of a prevention, what we are trying to do. But more importantly, we really feel proud about on that people part is that we were giving that vaccine as an equitable access at no profit. So the first company in the world, we were delivering 3 billion doses of vaccine to the world, saving the lives of the people across the world, along with Pfizer also did the same thing. But the important point is how do we bring beyond just manufacturing medicines and keeping the people at the center. The second thing we want to talk about is what we are recently doing on the climate, and which is more focused on planet. AstraZeneca announced last year, and I'm so proud to do that for India, that we announced 64 million trees to be planted in it. 64 million means 6.4 crore trees in India, in Meghalaya, of 27,000 hectares, giving employment to, let's say, farmers of 50,000, but focusing on planet. So again, we are not talking about just manufacturing medicines, but we are talking about the planet and how do we decarbonize the whole healthcare system. And the third is about the society. So one is how we are doing young health program. We are bringing the early screening for cancer, early screening for diabetes, which is the third part. But I think the overall outcomes which we are bringing is not only medicines, but how are we doing it much more early for the people and also for the planet. So we're going beyond to answer your question, just not only manufacturing, but thinking people, society, and planet, and sustainability becoming more core of our DNA across the healthcare system.
Awesome. So since we're talking about society, Alok, let me come to you. I mean, BSV has always had a focus on women's health. We know it very clearly that in India, women's health is the most neglected. Women are most neglected when it comes to healthcare. They don't even access healthcare. What we see in the urban areas is very, very different from what the interiors of India is. Is there something that BSV is doing to address this particular space for the nation?
Thanks, Harbinder, and good evening to all of you. Basically, like if I look at BSV, again, we are patient-centric. We are working basically in the area of women health, in the area of critical care, hematology, and emergency medicine. So, first question is beyond manufacturing. So, I would like to really state that pharma companies' two main jobs are R&D and manufacturing, okay, which is drug innovation, approval, and manufacturing. And second is medical marketing and sales. These are the two main jobs. Yeah. Now, in between, all the other functions are also very critical. But definitely, I think if these two things are not there, it is very difficult for any organization to really grow and do the needful with regards to patient centricity. Now, coming to this very nice question that, okay, you make a drug. I would say making a drug is one part, but providing healthcare solutions to the patients in India is a very, very important part. So we have a product basically in the area of Rh negative. Now what happens is Rh negative patients have a real problem in pregnancy. This is not even known to many people in public and many general practitioners also. People suffer, they have problems of miscarriages, etc. And this is one big area which BSV took up a few years back and have done a lot of education, like through Foxy and through various urban and rural areas, association of doctors, to really work on awareness, one, education, and also see how best we can get into the treatment by getting into the state government's protocol where the drugs are given free to the government hospital patients. The another area which we have worked on is anemia. Now 60% of women are anemic and a lot of problem occurs because of anemia, which is the basic cause. And I think that is one another area which we are working, especially in the awareness area. The third area is lactation. Now natural lactation is something which everybody talks about, but today's with the stressful life, this is becoming an issue. So today again we have partnered with Foxy for a program which is education on lactation, okay, across the country. And I think the most important thing is one more area is on program labor, you know, where you have like for example normal delivery, how can it become more, less painful, more convenient, more comfortable. So that is the another area where we are working on. Now these are the big areas of our awareness area, I would say, and treatment, where we are working with Foxy and other associations of gynae as well.
Lovely. Sujit, when we're talking of pharma, we know that we have been termed as the pharma manufacturing hub, But when it comes to R&D, there is not much that was happening until about 18 months ago or 24 months ago when the attention suddenly was brought in that, we need to address the R&D in India. What do you think needs to happen and what is it that Zota is doing to address this? Why is it that we can't have drugs where the research and development happens in India and the innovation can happen in India?
Right. So I think, whatever I answer, my colleagues would understand and agree because all of us are into the similar phenomena. So typically what used to happen is that it's not that we don't do R&D in India. India does and have very good R&D centers. And in the last close to around 3 to 4 years, we have seen a lot of new molecules coming up from India, quite a lot. At Zota Healthcare, typically, from the factory, whatever production happens, and our R&D cell that we have, we ensure that the desired amount of R&D goes through, of course, some technology that we have to, inscribe from elsewhere part of the world to ensure more amount of automations. Because nowadays R&D, what used to happen and the way R&D used to happen earlier 10 years ago is not what it happens today. The entire facet of R&D have changed. And when you do an R&D, it gets automated and everything gets into the complete simulation towards generation of the drugs. So what the methodology that most of the companies out here or elsewhere, the entire focus and the scientific approach of R&Ds have changed, and especially in the last 3-4 years. So we at Zota Healthcare are doing, but wherever required, we do bring in innovations from outside so that it's at the speed that we want. That's extremely important. So speed and accuracy towards ensuring that the R&D goes in the right direction and dimension, for the output of the desired medicine is the most important thing. And we are in generic medicines, so that's what is the need for India today, and that's where we are working to ensure that we optimize the cost for Indian healthcare as an ecosystem, and globally much larger at large, to ensure that we optimize the cost of getting into affordable healthcare for mass.
Meenakshi, let me come to you. When we look at your portfolio, you have a very strong portfolio in the cancer domain as well. But as an organization, we also need to understand what is it that we can do to help the society. Now, when you look at cancer, it is absolutely clear that cancer can be managed if the diagnosis happens much early. Now, as an organization, what is it that you are doing to create this awareness? Because much as even in the urban areas, when there's a higher level of literacy, education, etc., we still do not go in for early diagnosis or even regular checkups. Is there something that the company is doing to create a focus on early diagnosis in this space?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So absolutely, I think oncology or cancer is a big part of our portfolio. And of course, linked to our products, we're doing a lot. But your question is much more above and beyond that, right? So I think this was something we absolutely realized, and we decided to work through very credible partners. So our biggest partner here is Tata Trust, where what we have done is we started in the Northeast and now it's expanding, is through their hospitals set up a huge screening program. So almost every patient that walks in for at the hospital is invited to, not everybody wants to, but is invited to do a full NCD screening, non-communicable disease screening, which includes cancer screening. And that's been a huge eye-opener for us as well. I mean, we've almost screened, this was about 2 years ago that we started, so about 2 lakh patients have been screened and almost 22,000 have been detected for follow-up in oncology in some shape or form. So that was the eye-opener, that there is actually, now obviously that is a very specific population that's coming to the hospital for something, but we thought that is already a good starting point. So that was the first thing that we started. And now we are looking to expand that whole program across the country, but also go beyond footfall in hospital. The second thing, which is extremely underestimated, is the impact of a patient who gets diagnosed with cancer, particularly if they don't have the levels of income that's needed to afford many medications. What do they do to actually get how do they figure out what funding sources are there, who they can tap into? Because there's a lot of funding available, but for a patient to navigate it is very complicated. So this is another program we've set up with Doctors for You, which is at 14 government hospitals, where patients who get diagnosed with cancer, doesn't matter what medication they're put on, and in many cases they are not our medications. It's how do we guide them, counsel them to navigate through funding sources, mental support, family support, so on and so forth. Because it's not just the drug, it's the whole ecosystem, the whole life that changes when a patient gets diagnosed. So from that minute on, how do we handhold? So these are just a few examples. And most recently, what we started doing is supporting investments in startups who are doing a lot for cancer screening. So our proudest moment was a startup we funded in called Pragma Tech, who've come up with a cervical cancer screening where the woman can do self-screening at home. Now, this is not a commercial investment. It's through our CSR, so we have no stake in it. It's completely, arm's length. But what we are finding is there are a lot of startups who can actually help us expand the footprint of screening much faster than we can do ourselves. So there's a lot, the list goes on, but I think absolutely, to your point, we see it as our responsibility not just to bring the medications, but to do what we can to support screening, but also that first point of diagnosis, how do we support the patient?
Awesome. I think this is brilliant because I'm compiling a book and on cancer and what can it help? How can patients who are dealing with cancer muster the courage to go fight it out? And one of the issues that came up very blatantly, which I was not aware of, that the biggest problem that people are facing is the finances. How will my family manage the finances for my treatment? So I'm so glad somebody's addressing that. Second is, I think, one of the things that, if I can, share my perspective, is when we're talking of diagnosis or helping people go take that test, I think we have to start speaking about positivity so that people are not fearful of the result. So, if we can talk about how many people who took the test and they were found to not be facing cancer, I think that could be really, really helpful. Sanjeev, let me come to you. When we talk of AstraZeneca, not only AstraZeneca, I think it's an industry thing. There's a huge challenge that we face in terms of hiring. And there is a focus, very deliberate focus towards hiring women professionals, qualified women in this area. We see a lot of women who have studied science, but they do not end up working in that field for whatever reason. I mean, their family pressures or, unsure of where they will be married into or where the factories are. And this could become a potential challenge few years down the line. Is there something that AstraZeneca is doing to create, the comfort and the confidence of building a career in the field of science, especially chemistry, so that the industry has enough women manpower qualified to take on and fill the positions?
That's a very good question, and I will answer in two parts. One is, I think, first, as an industry, we need to demonstrate what we are doing, and again, with the purpose of bringing science to patients. There has to be a pull which needs to be created. Nobody would just join you. You have to showcase what we are doing for the people and society and the planet. And I've been interviewing people. When we talk about a narrative that this is not only about just giving medication, it is also about how do you help the society, how are you helping in sustainability. I can clearly see a lot of pull coming. The younger generation are looking for how an organization is helping the whole society and people and the planet. I think that pull and that narrative needs to be created by us as industry leaders and keep talking about it, because awareness is very, very important. The second thing is the another pull which needs to be created is about, so for example, AstraZeneca, we are working with the state government a lot. And we recently announced a big partnership in which we wanted to bring with the Health Minister of Karnataka and Health Minister of Goa, that how are we working at a grassroots level to bring early diagnosis of lung cancer. And the purpose there is to eliminate lung cancer as a cause of death. So when you're interviewing people, again, you're not just selling medicines, you're just saying that what is the purpose of there and why should they join our company? Is it beyond just selling medicines or beyond that? That's number two. Number three, AstraZeneca at a global level, we are now working on a STEM. We really believe that the STEM and the women and girls in STEM needs to come forward. And we are doing a great effort around that piece, and we'll also be further enhancing that in India. We are already doing it globally, and this year we have taken inclusion and diversity as a challenge. So STEM is something which we need to talk a lot and bring it much more early. So two parts: you have to create a pull to show to the world that what women leaders and of course diversity and inclusion is important for the country, but also bring some programs specifically focus on STEM, which AstraZeneca is doing, and we want to further strengthen that in India for the Indian girls and women in science.
Awesome. Alok, there's a lot that every company wants to do, including the large ones like yours. But there's not much that we can do beyond the resources that we have, despite having much more resources than any other company would have. At the same time, we are living in a times where technology is there, technology advancement has made it easy for small companies to create some innovations. But if you look at the startup scenario, a lot of these innovations die before seeing the light of the day, just because they have no support of the industry. They don't know whether, how to go to market. They don't have enough financial support to be able to do what they are doing. And they fear the large players like yours. Is there something that you think the industry or the large players in the industry should do to support these startups and help them go to market rather than seeing them as potential competition for some segment of your business?
Very well said. This is a very good question actually. And digital, technology, if I look at pharmaceutical, the adoption has not been really very good. Now, when I say this, definitely I would say that, especially if you look at, one of the areas is like omni-channel marketing. One of the area is also in the area of production. Then the area of, for example, customized based treatment. So there are various areas where we can actually use digital technology. I remember when I was in Singapore with Sanofi, where I worked for 35 years. We started omni-channel marketing in pharmaceuticals. We looked at AI models to engage customers. Okay. When I came to India last year, I realized that pharma marketing is still digital, is very, very limited. Now, 40% of the work which is done in marketing area can be done very well by AI to support the field force. And 60% can be only done by field force because, that cannot be done by machine. The relationship, as well as the communication, the power of influence, all that cannot be done by machines. So I think it is a very important area where we can get into. When we are talking about doctor-based engagement plans, customized engagement, we can definitely tie up, for example, with startups, because some of them are doing a great job. So instead of reinventing the wheel, as a company we can do that. Second, today in the area of recruitment, it plays a very important role. Third, in the area of supply chain, when we talk about SNOP processes, etc., there also we can get in. So today we are trying to really see how we can bring this transformation, which is the digital transformation, in different areas of the business, which is not limited only to sales and marketing. And analytics is a very big area actually, where I think Indian pharmaceutical industry has to do a lot of job, where already all big companies internationally, they have actually now an analytical head who's at the XCOM level. So definitely it's a very good opportunity.
Sujit, every manufacturing organization today is expected to have strategies, policies towards environmental protection. What do you think Zota is doing, and what do you think should be some strategies that every pharma manufacturer needs to adopt in today's day and age?
Yeah, I think for India, this is a very strong piece that most of the manufacturing companies have taken it up. As far as Zota is concerned, we ensured that every single compliances are done towards. I would not still say a zero emission, because that's more of theory for us, but as minimal as possible, of course, within the governance limits that goes through. When the question goes to what every pharma company should do is that, and now if you see a slice of India, pharma manufacturing is broken down into very large, mid and small. So you have very, very small pharma manufacturing as well if you go to multiple places. So along with the government policies and what the ownership of every pharma manufacturing should happen is to ensure that environmental health policies are taken up in line with the government policies towards minimizing any detrimental effect of environment. Why I did not use the word of carbon or zero emission, because I know that practically at this point of time it's not possible for even the small manufacturers. It's a good thing to say, but for small manufacturers, if you go to their factories, it really does not happen in that way. So within permissible limits, if they do it, at least it's a good start for everyone.
Thank you, Sujit. We have a minute left. So I'm going to ask one question, and maybe whoever wants to address it first can take the lead and others can follow. We have been talking about inequity in healthcare. We have healthcare where you have large corporate hospitals where the treatment is really expensive. You also have treatments which are available, which are affordable. while India is known for affordable treatment compared to the globe, other places worldwide, we are still more expensive or very unaffordable for our Indian population. Similarly, if you look at the medicines that we are producing, some of the medicines are really, really prohibitively expensive for the general population in our country. What do you think pharma companies need to do to align the objective of serving the community with the corporate objectives that they have? So whoever wants to.
I'll take it first because it is a very relevant question for us. We run more than 700 retail pharmacy stores in the country by the name of Dawai India. More than 700. And it's well spread up all across Jammu and Kashmir, Kerala, Kolkata, Bangalore, everywhere. Now, these are very high-end generic medicine stores where affordability is taken as a key parameter. I myself work in the rural India. I have seen if you go to the deep of villages, people really cannot afford expensive medicines. And that's the truth which is there. So it's extremely important that we ensure that affordable medicines, affordable good quality generic medicines should be the only mantra when we talk of OP, so that at least people can afford. These are the people who can't even afford food properly. Forget about any branded medicines. They can't afford expensive drugs. They break the pills and take because they can't afford. They skip morning, evening, night to only morning, night or morning, evening because they can't afford. So first and foremost thing, I think it's very, very important that we must ensure that affordable medicines reaches to the pocket of every single Indian. And once that happens, then the basics are being done. Then we come into, the hospitalization, the tertiary clinics, the subsidiary activities, etc. But if those medicines don't reach, if those good quality, low cost medicines don't reach to the common mass of India, we are far, far away from what we actually aspire to achieve as healthcare system in India.
Anyone else? Meenakshi, would you want to address this?
I think Sujit summed it up really well. So I think that's exactly, sometimes there is an assumption that we have different objectives coming. And I think everyone has really the same objective, that we want to make sure medicines can get to the right patient at the most affordable price. That is what all of us are trying to do. I think how you are approaching it is extremely novel. That's one huge, it will have huge impact for all of us. It's exactly the same. So whether it's about trying to get India-specific pricing wherever possible, we absolutely try to do that. Where we cannot get India-specific pricing, we do it through patient access programs. So that, if you buy, one, then the subsequent 2, 3 can be free. We're all trying to get into Ayushman Bharat. That is a common thing. I'm sure all of us have, initiatives to try and get into Ayushman Bharat with our medication. So I think the objectives are very similar, whether you are multinational, Indian, vaccine, chemical, biologics, it's all similar. We're all trying to get it to as many patients as possible. And I think that's probably the way I'll close it, yeah.
No, I think all have been said. I would say healthcare equity is an important subject, and it is even more after the COVID period. And there are two things which I will just close it by saying. One is that not only medicines, if we can bring equity or equitable access to even screening at all levels, is much more reducing the burden. So it's no more about just acute care. It's preventive care, equity, and equitable access to that is a very, very important thing. And we keep continuing work bringing back, our medicines at an affordable price to India. Number two is, again, I will repeat the same thing, but one big model, and I'm not sure it can be repeated again, but bringing vaccine equitable at no profit was one big model. 3 billion doses across the world, equitable, low middle income countries, and even for India at no profit was one example for that. But I think preventive care, preventive screening, if we can even bring equity there, we don't want people to become sick. I think the model will change towards that, can we make less people sicker and screen earlier and bring equitable access to screening and diagnosis is a very big step which we all need to take together.
Yeah. So I think apart from all the points which have been added, one of the things is, if you look at, India consumes if I have to really look at, is around 8% of the total medicines, in the world. And our pricing is 1/8 of the world pricing in today's context. So we are the most economically priced medicines you get in India. That is the first part. Second, still I would say the treatment has to become affordable, but I would add it should be quality treatment which should be affordable, because we can't compromise on quality. Third area is, I think when the PMO started Jan Ashudhi, okay, I think this is one area which has grown very well. And now like Zota, for example, in your case. So we are looking at today generic market which is growing faster than the branded generics market in India. So means generic is doing very well, branded generics are also doing well. So we are at a good position at this juncture, but still we have got an issue where people are unable to afford, and where we have Ayushman Bharat as one of the schemes. There are many, I would say, funding associations like Hak Darshak, etc., working with AIMS, and other big institutes, which is trying to see how we can fund some of the high cost, treatment in diseases like oncology, etc. So I think a lot of work is getting done here. As pharmaceuticals, we will try to do our best, because that is one area we want to really improve access. And I think as Sanjeev mentioned, I think it's also important about screening. Because if you get early screening, many of the problems get solved. And digital health, especially done by startups, is one big area which I think as emerging, which will solve this problem to a great extent in future.
Awesome. I think with that, I'm going to close the panel and proceed further with the rest of the day. Thank you so much, panelists, for joining us. It is, it was so nice to understand what each one of you is doing to contribute to the society and help building a healthier and greater society. Thank you so much.